How's everybody feeling? Good? Excellent. I'm excited. I love meadows. I love flowers. That's why I work in conservation. Quick survey. How many people here have a lawn? Okay. How many people have a meadow? We're going to work to change that. So this is my presentation, Lose the Lawn, Make it a Meadow. And here we have pictures of the Hartman Meadow, which Chelsea was just singing the praises of. It's over at our office on 925 Providence Road. You can stop by anytime. Right now, it is in peak bloom. It's impressive. I have some photos in here, but it doesn't do it justice. I encourage you to walk, particularly at the sunset, listen to the birds, listen to the bees. It's an incredible experience. All right, a brief history, the root of our love affair with lawns. Pun intended. Where did lawns come from? Any ideas? Anyway. You got it. European estates. In the 18th century, it was a way for the elite to show that they could afford to not use their land for food, and then additionally have laborers to maintain their expansive lawns. Because you either had to have somebody out there with a European lawnmower, that's it, or you had to have your goats and sheep out there grazing, because they didn't have lawnmowers in the 18th century. So it was a symbol of wealth for European elite. When smiling lawns and tasteful cottages begin to embellish a country, we know that order and culture are established. Andrew Jackson Downing, a landscape philosopher from the 19th century. And by and large, this has stuck with us. When we see a lawn, we see order, we see conformity, and we see a pleasant landscape that feels safe. Immigrants in the 18th century brought the idea of the lawn with them to America. Originally, it was a practical solution to anticipate hostile visitors or to graze your cattle if you had them. They grew in popularity with the invention of the real lawnmower in the mid-1800s, and then really it was in the post-war development of the American suburb. It really became widespread, looking at first at Levittown, New York. And it was an easy and cheap way for developers to cover the scars of development. It grew quickly, you had to water it, and then you could walk away. And then over time, as continued, it has evolved into a status of wealth, success, and conformity. And that's an example of the early real lawnmower in Victorian clothes. But, it wasn't easy finding the right mix that would grow here in North America. English grasses, they couldn't handle our climate. The native grasses, we couldn't get them under control. They have that neat clipped look. So in 1915, Department of Agriculture collaborated with the U.S. Golf Association. Through experimentation and rigorous trials, they figured out that Bermuda grass from Africa, bluegrass from Europe, fescues, bentgrass, and zoysia grass from Asia would provide us with the perfect combination that you could play golf on and entertain your neighbors. By 1885, America was producing how many lawnmowers would you care to guess? Anyone, throw out a number. Oh, wow. Not quite. Not quite. 50,000 in 1885. 25 years after the Civil War, we were cranking out lawnmowers because people wanted lawns to emulate the European elites of yore. Until the mid-19th century, though, most houses in America had gardens because you could grow your vegetables there, you could grow your flowers there. And that design reflected an emphasis on privacy that had also been handed down from European residential design. If you go to Europe, they have like little cottage gardens, it's very private, it's not public. The transition to the more public placement of lawns was tied to three major developments in the American suburbs. Frederick Law Olmsted with the suburban communities on the East Coast. They were modeled after parks with a communal green and additional green spaces, and the word park was often included in their names. Tuxedo Park in New York, Llewellyn Park in New Jersey. That's an example of Tuxedo Park from a postcard. Then the automobile, long distance travel. You had to impress the passersby. You had people from out of town driving by. You wanted them to look at your lawn and say, there is a well-to-do person. And they were intentionally built facing the rail line to enhance the scenery and the experience for travelers. And that's a picture from Philadelphia. World War II, federal government, low-cost mortgages for suburban development and housing. And they often featured lawns because they wanted to mimic the upper middle class suburban development of Cedar Park and Llewellyn Park. A well-maintained lawn, luxurious in its plushness, implying leisure, even as upkeep had a stubborn way of preventing it, came to represent a triumph of another kind, the order of suburbia over the squalor of the city. So think about the Industrial Revolution, living in a city, cramped conditions, all that pollution. You finally, you made your way in the world, you could move out to the suburbs. You wanted peace, you wanted quiet, you wanted a gentle lawn to impress your neighbors. And then, as Roman Mars says, it became known as the anti-broken window. Because if you lived in the suburbs and you had a lawn and it was well maintained, you belonged there. And your neighbors wouldn't call you. How much lawn covers America? Are you ready? 2% of the country, for 40 million acres of lawn, just lawn, mowed lawn. College campuses, institutional buildings, private homes, parks, everywhere. It's about the area of Wisconsin. Turf grasses take up roughly 3 times as much area as corn. Grass is our largest cultivated, irrigated crop that nobody can eat. We can see it from satellite. There was a woman, Christina Malisi, who worked with NASA, and they looked at all the aerial maps, and they were able to identify where the lawns were. $9 billion gallons of water to irrigate. How often? What do you think the frequency that we use 9 billion gallons to irrigate our lawns? Every day. That's 200 gallons of drinking water per person per day. I don't know about you, but I don't even drink a gallon of water in a day. I'm lucky if I get to 32 ounces. So then Malisi also modeled the effect of watering based on humidity. And if you adjusted for that, the areas in blue, they don't need as much because of the humidity. And then going to the dark color, they need more because the humidity is low. So even if you just start thinking about how you water based on where you live, you can start to conserve water. It's too important to our identity as Americans to simply allow everyone to have his own way with it. And once we decide that the land should serve as a vehicle of consensus rather than an arena of self-expression, the American lawn, collective, national, ritualized, and plain, begin to look inevitable. It's every day, and it's the sprinklers, and it's irrigation, it's all this incredible input of resources to something that really only gives us a visual benefit. So what about carbon? The carbon footprint of our lawn love affair. Again, for something that's a visual benefit. So let's say you love your lawn. Leave the grass clippings to decompose, and the lawn could store up to 16.7 teragrams of carbon. That's 37 billion pounds, or the weight of 147,000 blue whales, just by leaving your clippings. Carbon costs, annual maintenance. So net carbon uptake by photosynthesis is the first graph. So watering 1 inch a week, fertilizing, removing the clippings, that's the carbon uptake. So then if you leave the clippings, look at the difference in the carbon. So if you're watering 1 inch a week and fertilizing less, and you leave the clippings, the carbon goes down. And if you water to match evaporation and you leave the clippings, the total carbon storage is way better. So even if you want to maintain your lawn, there are steps you can take to improve the environmental impact of it. But it's a big business in America. Lawn care, lawn fertilization, guys out there with the mowers and the clipping, chemical, all that stuff. It's billions of dollars. And it's grown. But the future is now. We have options. Big 4 native grasses that are great for pollinators. Andropogon, or big bluestem, Panicum virgatum, or switchgrass. I'm not going to try that one. Little bluestem, and Sargassum nutans, yellow prairie grass, are all great warm season grasses that you don't have to mow. They benefit the birds, they benefit the bees, the butterflies. You cut them down once in the spring, and it's beautiful. And then you have winter coverage. So all those non-migratory birds have little places to make nests and hiding places in the winter. So this is our Hartman meadow. In the first spring of 2009, and then July, and then August. In 2010, it was more robust. 2011, you can see the Joe Pye leaves. So when you install a meadow, it takes patience, it takes time. You're putting down a whole bunch of seed, and some of them are going to germinate quickly, and you'll get them the first year, and then the second, the third, the fourth year, you'll start getting even more. And then when the birds come, if you're lucky, they'll deposit more seeds as you attract them to your habitat. And that's today. It is a tapestry of colors and textures. I took a walk through that meadow to take these pictures last week, and the bees were buzzing, the butterflies were going through, the monarchs, the red-winged blackbirds were calling. It is just such bursting with life if you create this space. And in my opinion, it's a lot nicer to look at than just clipped grass. There's some more. So the benefits of a meadow: it will improve the water quality because meadows have deeper roots. So when it rains, it soaks into the ground and they draw it up, and you're not getting pollutants washed away. Reduces the stormwater runoff and creates a higher water table. Again, it's because of those root systems. Your traditional Kentucky bluegrass lawn, the roots are like that deep. But you get a meadow, roots are going to go down 2 feet. And again, those roots will stabilize your soil and they'll prevent erosion. I can't tell you how many times I'm driving by and I see a sloped meadow, a sloped lawn. You can see the rivulets where it's starting to scour or get washed away because of the rain, because of those shallow roots. If you have a bad season and you don't water, your lawn dies, and then it rains, and then all that soil starts to get washed away. It creates a safe habitat for butterflies, bees, birds, and small critters. And it provides food because the insects are there, and that's what those animals eat. And so you're building the basis of the ecosystem from the ground up, literally. You eliminate annual costs and labor associated with lawn mowing, fertilizing, and irrigation. You're reducing the air and the noise pollution. You reduce the carbon emissions from mowers, and you can control harmful invasive plant species that can otherwise come in and dominate and push out the plants that you're trying to grow. This is a recording I took at my house, where I unfortunately do not have a meadow. And thanks to the new Merlin bird app sound ID, I can tell you that that is an American robin and a gray catbird. Now for juxtaposition, the next one is a little bit different habitat. I did it at my in-laws' house in upstate New York, but they do have meadows there. Those were the birds that I recorded. Robins, wrens, crows, sparrow, veery, field sparrow, blackbirds, yellowbird, yellow warbler, mourning dove, flycatcher, eastern king, raven, the tipping sparrow. And so if you put a meadow, you're going to have a sonically rich environment. Come out in the morning, you're going to hear the birds singing. You're going to hear species that you didn't get to hear before. So it's not just a visual improvement, it's oral. And depending on what you plant, it can be smelling improvement, because there's fragrant things. So myths versus facts. A lot of time, people that are championing meadows and advocating for meadows come up with these myths. Natural landscapes lower property values because they're messy and unattractive. Actually, studies have shown real estate with distinctive, well-done natural landscapes actually produce a marketing edge and have a positive effect on property value. Natural meadows attract vermin. Not true. The most feared vermin, like rats and mice, are attracted to food, so you're more likely to find them in your garbage can. And snakes, we only have one poisonous species in the state, not around here, so those snakes are going to be eating the mice and the vermin that you are concerned about. Natural landscapes can harbor ticks. Ticks like larger hosts, like woodland animals, deer. And so, you might get a deer that nests in your meadow overnight, but again, as long as you don't go tearing through the middle of the meadow, it's not going to be a problem. Stay on the outside, have a mown edge, enjoy it. As long as you have that mown edge and you see that, you're not going to have any more ticks on your clothes. So great wood where they're going to be jumping off of you off the ribbon and barbering. Breeding grounds for mosquitoes, actually they need standing water. Turf lawn is more likely to have that standing water because of the shallow roots. And meadow has deep roots, so you're not going to have that standing water. And living in the city, I can tell you, I have a mosquito problem, and it's because of all the impervious surface, all those little places where the rainwater catches. All a mosquito needs is about 2 inches of water to breed and nest. And so if you do have areas where you're concerned about that, you can get mosquito dumps and put that out there. Even build a trap, put out a little plate with water and put some olive oil on it, and they can't get out. Very simple solution. Natural landscapes produce pollen that causes allergies. Most of that is ragweed, pigweed, and non-native grass. Goldenrod gets a bad name because it is so visually stunning at the time when the ragweed is blooming. It is not the culprit. Some of our great species down here in Southeast PA, bee balm, it blooms June to August. It likes sun part shade, it gets 3 to 5 feet high. Aster, got New England aster, got New York aster, got aromatic aster. They bloom August to October, so like that's the last season fill up for all those pollinators before winter. It's a really important species. Like school sun grows 3 to 4 feet. Ironweed, I see that growing everywhere. It is indestructible. Throw some of that ironweed seed down, it's going to come up. It likes sun to part shade, blooms July to September, it can get tall. So also, as you think about installing those, think about how high you want it to be. You don't have to have a 10-foot ironweed in your meadow if you don't want. You can choose your selection and choose your species based on what you need. You can make a bespoke environment with colors and textures and heights to suit your property so that your neighbors won't call you because your ironweed is too tall. Mountain mint. This is a great one because the bees love it and the deer don't eat it because of that wonderful minty flavor. Blooms July to September, sun part shade. Wild bergamot, close cousin to bee balm. June to July, sun part shade, the bees love it. We have a lot of it over at the office meadow right now. Stop by, come tomorrow, and just take in all that wild bergamot. Joe Pyeweed. July to September, it's blooming right now, 5 to 8 feet. Again, this is a taller species, so if you're worried about height, don't plant Joe Pyeweed. But if you don't mind, Excellent. Purple cone flower, echinacea. July to September, sun parfait. Butterfly weed is great. Full sun, but it likes drier soil. If you have a wet area, it's not going to grow. If you have it growing, don't ever move it. It hates to be moved. Blazing star, Liatris. July to September, gets these great long stalks, 2 to 4 feet. It's a real prairie species, has deep roots. I planted it in a pot like 4 years ago. Comes back every year. Can't explain it, but it does well in pots. Invasive plants that you need to be on the lookout for. The thistles, they are nasty. If you have them and you are trying to plant a meadow, you will have to deal with them before you install your meadow. Crabgrass, another one, you know, that's a pest of lawns as well. Ragweed, that's the one that will make you sneeze. Burdock, that's the one that gets stuck to your clothes when you walk by, big and tall plant. Horseweed, fir cucumber, bindweed, garlic mustard. If you get garlic mustard early in the season when it's young, you can collect it as long as animals haven't feed on it, and you can make pesto. It's very good. It is actually a medieval herb, and it was introduced here on purpose. Canada thistle, and again, another one of the thistles, also musk thistle. Really hard to get rid of if you have it. So if you have a meadow and you see it, you got to get rid of it immediately. Johnson grass, wild parsnip, curly dock, Queen Anne's lace, and everywhere. I'm not as worried about that. Multiflora rose, nasty, thorny species, actually introduced by, I believe it was the Department of Transportation for roadside stabilization. No, it was USDA. They introduced it for hedgerows in between grazing cattle. The kudzu vine was introduced by the Department of Transportation for roadside stabilization. That's a whole other talk, is how all of our invasives got here. Jimson weed and the invasive honeysuckle. We have invasive honeysuckle vines, which is Japanese honeysuckle. We also have invasive honeysuckle shrubs. That most of our hedgerows are in this area, the Amaranth honeysuckle. The birds like it, it's good habitat, but you can replace it with better stuff. So how to start your own meadow? Stop mowing. See what grows. You might get lucky and get some good stuff coming up. You know, kind of thinking about making your lawn or your house into a better habitat. It's a spectrum, right? You can take baby steps. So the first smallest step you can take is to stop mowing. And if you look out our window, our grass right here is filled with clover. And that's great. The bees love clover. And maybe that's all you do at first. And that's great, because that's better than what you were doing yesterday. So you let it grow, you see what comes up, and then you can decide if you want to keep what's there or if you want to replace it. And you can call me and I will come to your house and I will tell you if it's worth saving or if you should replace it, free of charge. It's part of our outreach. Then, if you decide to proceed and take it to the next level, kill your lawn. You can either scalp it mechanically and remove it. So if you have a small lawn, that might be a practical way to do it. If you're dealing with like an acre or more, you might have to rely on herbicides. You have to be careful. Everybody's concerned about herbicides. There's more and more news coming out about how bad they are. But I will say, if you're doing a lawn conversion, it's a one-time application. Kill the lawn to replace it with something better. So you have to decide your own tolerance to risk. Then, in the fall, you seed with your native species. You want to have good ground contact, cover it with straw. It's the winter, so you won't have to worry about irrigation. The following spring, you see what comes up this time. Hopefully, it's better than what came up when you stopped mowing. And again, you want to kill any invasive species that might start coming in because you don't want them to get a foothold. If you get Canada thistle and you don't treat it, it will take over and it will outcompete your meadow. And then the following fall, you can reseed again and repeat that process. In like 3 to 5 years, you will have something magnificent. So, Willistown Conservation Trust has a lawn conversion grant program. We received funding from the state of Pennsylvania through the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. They have a community watershed and forestry program where they're subsidizing the costs of landowners to convert their mowed lawn into meadow habitat. And so the parameters of the program are, we're looking for properties that are a minimum a third of an acre, Chester, Delaware, or Montgomery counties, preferably the Crum, Ridley, or Darby Creek, because that's sort of our program area. You have to sign a 25-year landowner agreement. Now that's per the state, because they're spending public money, they want to know that it's a good investment. And so let's say you move in year 10, you just include that document with all the other sale documents of the property. It's not actually a deed restriction. Willistown Conservation Trust is going to select the contractor because we are bundling these properties together, and then we have to do a low price bid. So we'll get 3 quotes, the lowest quote will be the one that we go with, and then we will do, 5 or 6 properties at a time. You can only use native grass or wildflower species, nothing non-native and nothing exotic. And sometimes you have to be careful. Companies like Ernst, they'll do a native species, but they will mix sometimes non-native stuff in there because it's an early grower or a fast grower. Annual mowing and invasive control is the responsibility of the landowner. So after we do that meadow installation, every year afterwards, you have to mow it, but only once in the spring, and you have to keep an eye on any invasives that come in and control them. And so like, let's say we do this at your house, it comes in, you get like 50% germination. We can come back and reseed it the following fall, because DCNR wants to see success. They're not just looking for, okay, we banged out 50 acres. They want to know that we did 30 acres of really high quality meadow habitat. So chemical or mechanical removal of the lawn. We do a drill seeding with native species. That's what the drill seed looks like, kind of goes along and drills in the seeds. Ideally, the work can be done in the fall because then you don't have to worry about irrigation, but if the spring timing works better, you can do it in the spring. And depending on the literature you read, some people suggest the spring, but you might have to irrigate if you're going about seeding in the spring. So that's it for my part of the presentation.